I was ordered to take, this 1958, I was ordered to take my name out of published books and the telephone book.
And you came up with Archimedes.
I, Zizig and Doce, A to Z, right? Which was the last listing for 58 years in the Manhattan phone book. Now it's the last listing in this phone book here. Because I closed my office off and whatever a couple of years ago, and now I'm here. And I learned only, I don't know, a year ago maybe, that Richard had used that name in San Francisco. Did you know that?
Wonderful, no.
Yeah.
Great
He had
name.
his number as the last listing in the San Francisco phone book. And he probably told me, but I don't think I, maybe we were all talking or whatever. It's funny.
Do you have papers that you could assemble and give commentary? What I'm talking about is that William Bennett retold stories of value, children's stories, but he gave a paragraph before each story to say why the story was important.
Right.
And it was a wonderful collection. I don't know if you caught that.
William Bennett, yeah, I know.
William Bennett, he said that parents need to be giving children stories that communicate character development, challenges. And so he would, you could, for example, all right.
I had several little things that you remember my little girl that I raised, 2 years old,
right,
when I lost my wife and children. I gave her new website.
Right,
Yeah.
C.K. Bradley.
Yeah, C.K. Bradley. Have you looked at it?
I'm
if you want,
not
look at
great.
The blog.
Yeah, I'm going to go.
It's
just it's not strong here.
Accurate, but every now and then she makes a small mistake in it. But what a story she. But before she was born, I developed a thing called TLAs for my twins, for my sons, called True Life Adventures.
Oh, good.
Every night, when they went to bed, I would lie down on an adjacent bed or a chair, what have you, and tell them about Little Jack. That's me. And I would take something that happened to me, and I would modify it, add to it, and so on, as an illustration of what it might help you think about how to handle that problem at school or whatever. True Life Adventures, TLAs. And I just came across, in my archives, I have 105 unopened boxes of all my transcripts, carbon copies of letters going back to the late 50s. I pulled out the box that had 61 because I'm looking for a very important letter to Huntington Hartford. You remember him? And quite a story about him. And I have gone through these folders about this thick, and they're all carbon copies, day by day. And I had a wonderful girl who worked for me, who's in her 90s now, still with us. But I was told by, I guess it's her granddaughter, that she's lost it upstairs. Right. But she typed every one of those letters, including ones that were supposed to be in a separate folder, confidential. Right? I couldn't believe who I'd written to. You see the names, you'll know them.
Terrific.
In history.
Right.
And I did work with Einstein, Robert Oppenheimer at Princeton, but how I met them is a funny story.
Right.
I didn't know who they were.
No.
I helped them out.
Right.
And,
you were just being the executive, right?
Well, I know. I was collecting land snails on the Raritan Canal, that dirty brown water that comes from Trenton all the way to New Brunswick. And when I arrived at Princeton, my freshman year in 1950, David, who had a great shell collection, he was a really good conchologist. And, I got married on Sanibel Island, the best seashell island in the Western Hemisphere. And it was all because of that. I grew up with seashells. And when David died, amongst many, many things, he left me the entire collection. That goes back to the family to 1722. Because in Europe and England, seashells was the big thing. And anyway, they offered me a job at Princeton because they had these 3 huge cases of a gift given in the late 19th century of seashells, but they had nobody who knew seashells or anything about them. When they heard that I had some knowledge, they paid me $40 a month, gave me an office in Geo Hall in the sub-basement, where I'd be down and I'd go up about another 4 or 5 feet. There'd be a tiny window like this that went out into the grass. Remember Geo Hall?
Sure.
Way downstairs. And I opened up and did a decent job and classified that collection for them. Had some wonderful stuff.
Right.
And anyway, so I'm collecting land snails on the canal. And when I arrived on my bicycle, which was leaning against the shrubs, the canal's not very wide. It's about a little wider than the street. And it's all brown, dirty, and it's muddy and slippery. I'm holding onto the shrub, and in the distance I've seen this guy with a
rototiller?
Motor, mowing.
Tiller. Oh, motor,
yeah.
mowing, right. Yeah.
But he was about 800-900 feet away, and all of a sudden I'm holding here, and this guy looks at me, and he's got a mustache and a little beard, and he's got curly, sort of black-gray hair, and he's wearing blue jeans, which we didn't wear at Princeton. Remember that? We wore
khakis.
Yeah.
Khaki, come on.
Yale wore dungarees.
Right.
So here's the first dungaree I've seen, and he's got sneakers on and no socks. And as a boy growing up, when it became warm weather, I always, with my little leather loafers, I loved not wearing socks. I'd ride my bicycle and have some fresh air. My 3 aunts who raised me, one of whom is by marriage a distant cousin, would say, Jack, no, you must wear socks. You can't walk around with bare feet.
Which,
So,
of course,
here was the
inspires
guy,
one
first
to
guy,
do
bare
something
feet.
different. Right.
And he's looking at me and he said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm an amateur malacologist. He said, what? And I said, mollusca. He said, oh, in his eyes. His whole, oh, very interesting. You're in the graduate school. No, I said, no, sir, I'm in the college. You're a senior. And I said, no, sir, I'm a freshman. What? And you know all about mollusca? And I said, well, not everything, but I'm collecting. And I gave him one of the land snails, because I had a rope bag, which I still have, and woven rope bag. And I
for
have
collecting.
About, a dozen shells in it.
Right.
And all through Florida for the land snails, through that huge, what's it called, that big...
The Everglades?
Everglades.
Right.
Through there, I went with David and boots on.
Wow.
Collected all those land snails
Sure.
and trees. Anyway, it turns out that we chat away and what have you, and I don't realize who he is until about a week or so later. David has sent me a short note and said, Jack, I'm coming to Princeton to meet with a very interesting man I'd like you to meet. Could you meet me at the station? So I'm at the PJ&B, and David and I walk up. Not Washington, what's the other street called?
Alexander?
Alexander.
Right.
And we go to Mercer Street and down
Right.
Mercer. We knock on this door, and this woman opens it. And we walk into the living room, and the kitchen door opens to the living room. And this guy, I look at him, he looks at me. And
mollusca!
Yeah, it's Albert Einstein. But David hasn't told me yet.
No.
You know, he was certainly well known, but you know, whatever. Anyways.
How fun. What a great story.
Oh yeah, so then I actually met with him, had tea with him, I had lunch with him once, tea with him 3 times. And then later on that day when I was...
This would have been around 50...
It was October 1950.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So he was still vital. He was still...
He was wonderful. He was a sweet, sweet man. And the girl opened the door, I believe was his stepdaughter.
Stepdaughter.
Or his niece, one or the other. I'm trying to remember
All right.
now. And then at our second meeting with David, David is writing this first thing. I helped him publish, remember the book, Gardener's Universal Love?
I'd love to bring that back into print.
I gave it to you.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not currently on...
No, it was used at Dartmouth.
Yeah, but I mean, you can bring it back. We'll talk about how to do that, because we can
the first
get it
one
scanned,
of that was
right?
about this thing, and David wrote it, and I did a little input, nothing much. But then when, before David died, I redid the whole thing, published it expanded it on and on and on. And I printed about 1,500 copies. And for years, I would send 6 to 10 to Dartmouth and to Cambridge in England, where 2 professors would teach comparative religion and what have you, and David stuff. And Einstein was not an atheist.
Even though he talks about, well, he says God does not roll dice.
Right. But he doesn't deny that there may be something beyond us. But
Right.
he would say simply to me and to others, I've heard him say, he said, look, I know what I know. I know who I am. And I have no regrets about being Jewish, though that may upset some people. But I am not religious as to the Old Testament or that. But there may very well be something beyond us. And he used the word holy other, which I've never forgotten.
Isn't that a nice name?
Holy other.
The H-O.
Right. Yeah. Actually, it was W-H-O-L-L, holy, meaning. But now that you said it was holy in that sense, yeah, I like it.
Oh.
Holy other, yes. It was W-H-O-L-L-Y, yeah. Interesting. At any rate, I had some wonderful times with him. At our second or third tea, he was having some problem in this conference table, which was loaded with these legal yellow pads, and over the fireplace, there was no fire, there was a big chalkboard, mostly white chalk with all his wonderful, I couldn't read a thing.
No.
And it was done mostly in white chalk, but it was a little blue chalk and red chalk, depending. Always a significant reason
He
for
used
it.
color.
Yes.
Interesting. See, I often ask my students to use colors to highlight something.
That's right.
So
That
this
was
is
what
good.
it was for.
Right. Okay.
In fact, it was through him I learned to use highlighters.
Yep.
Which
is
do
a
with anything.
form,
Catching,
right.
You know, I have yellow,
Right.
blue, red.
You want to guide the reader.
That's right.
Right.
No,
So
he was
you
wonderful.
saw this big chalkboard
Yes.
with colored
right.
writing.
Well, it was mostly white chalk. And then on the table. And David went upstairs with him twice to his little study on the second. I never did. I could have actually, but I was not a pushy guy. I was so pleased to be included. And then when I helped this guy with the fedora, oh, you haven't seen my hat? It's in the car.
Okay.
I was ordered to wear a fedora when I joined McKinsey. Because everybody wore a fedora in those days. And I was the only guy. I had a nice